Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am Alison. I write as Alison May, 50% of Juliet Bell, and most recently as Ali Sinclair. And here on YouTube I talk about writing, publishing and all things related. If that sounds of interest to you, then please subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications bell so you get a notification when there are new videos, and please do like and comment, go back, watch the previous videos, let me know what's of interest to you. Today's topic is romantasy. What's all that about? Essentially, romantasy is all the publishing industry seems to be able to talk about at the moment. For those of you who are unfamiliar, romantasy is one of those compound terms, romance and fantasy. And it is the genre of the moment. So we're talking about books that mix some of the tropes of sort of traditional high fantasy with romantic tropes. And it feels as though publishing has just discovered this as a brand new concept that only started in about October 2023, and no one had ever thought of it before that, and now it's really all they seem to be interested in buying, and it's all the internet seems to talk about, and it's all the publishing parts of social media seem to talk about, and it sort of feels, if you live within that writer and publishing bubble, as if romantasy is the only game in town. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how these kind of trends in the market come about, and how come we're in the sort of middle of a big one at the moment. So the first thing to say is that when a big trend in the market comes about like this, it's hardly ever something new. Obviously, there have been fantasy novels with romantic elements, romantic novels with fantasy elements, pretty much forever. It's not a new idea. Cross-genre fiction isn't a new idea. Having a romance story at the heart of your fantasy story is not a new idea. But it has perhaps, certainly in the UK, been something that has maybe been a little bit tricky to sell, a little bit tricky to sell to a publisher at least, not necessarily tricky to sell to readers, but tricky to sell to a traditional publisher until more recently. Now, not easy to sell, because it's never easy to sell anything to a traditional publisher, but more traditional publishers are looking for romantasy. But what they're also doing is they're looking back at books over their catalogue, possibly books that are already published, certainly books that are under contract, and saying, how can we rebrand this? So you're talking about exactly the same books that maybe 2 or 3 years ago, 5 years ago, they were selling as romance and really skating over the fantasy elements in the blurb, or possibly they were selling as out and out high fantasy and really skimming over the romantic elements in the blurb. Now they're explicitly selling as romantasy. It's not that those books have changed in any way, it's that the marketing position for those books has changed. And that's come about for a lot of reasons. Firstly, there have been a few really big hits in that romantasy space. Sarah Jane Maas is a hugely successful author, and there have been books like The Fourth Wing, which have done astonishingly, astronomically well, not astonishingly well, beyond the level where it's astonishing where any one individual book just massively breaks out. But those books have done astronomically well. Book Talk, the book enthusiastic section of TikTok, has really taken romantasy to its heart, and there's lots of talk about romantasy and romantic tropes in fantasy novels and of writers like Sarah J Maas on TikTok. So those things are sort of coming together. And at the moment for the publishing industry, TikTok is the shiny new thing. If you talk to publishers, if you talk to publicists in publishing, they're all about Book Talk. How can we make this big on Book Talk? Is this the sort of book Book Talk likes? And if Book Talk really picks up a book and it goes viral and lots of people are talking about it, that can make a really substantial difference to your sales. But it's this year's thing that can make a really big difference to your sales. 2 years ago, it was Bookstagram. Oh, Bookstagram, Instagram's the place to be. Instagram's the place to talk about books. It's the only place. A few years before that, it was blogs, book blogs. Oh, they're the new thing. They're amazing. We need to get in with book bloggers. And none of those drives from publishing were wrong. They were all absolutely right, and they were all absolutely of a moment. There are lots of book bloggers out there still going. There are lots of bookstagrammers still talking about books on Instagram. So all of those bits of the market are still there. But publishing loves a shiny new thing in the same way that they love a debut author. And if you're an already published author, they would quite like you to be a debut again. They also love a shiny new social media thing because it's a new way to readers. And if it's a new route to readers, the perception is that those are new readers. Now, of course, they're not new readers. There may be some people that are drawn to particular genres because they've seen them on TikTok, on Instagram, on book blogs, on YouTube, wherever it might be. But essentially what that is word of mouth on a grand scale. And it's word of mouth between people who are already interested in reading. What TikTok has done is sort of reassured publishers that there is a market for fantasy novels with romantic elements, for romantic novels set in fantasy worlds. And it's something that lots of us have known for years and years and years there is a market for, because we've been seeking out books like that. But exploding on BookTok has reassured publishers that there is a market, and then you just need 1 or 2 or 3 books to do really well for publishers to look at that and go, oh, that's the section of the market that we should be in, because that's the section of the market where there are big sales to be made. So trends like this come along periodically. Publishing is always looking for the shiny new thing, but then once they've got the shiny new thing in their teeth, they tend to grip onto it till the absolute death. So trends can be quite long lasting and can tend to last. You still get excitement within publishing long after you're starting to think, is this still the current big thing? But the reason for that actually isn't that the trend should have passed. It's more that these excitements come about through recognising reader preferences that were always there and feeding them, so that actually those core big genres, fantasy, romance, sci-fi, crime, action thriller, spy thriller, I mean, we could break all of those down into lots of different kind of little subdivisions, but generally speaking, those really big genres kind of are always doing well. And then you get sort of trends within them, and those usually come about because 1 or 2 or 3 books in that kind of little subgenre or little subsection have done really well, and then publishers go, ooh, we should be publishing stuff like that because it's done really well, and that kind of creates this bubble where that is the hot thing and the only thing for a period until something over here does unexpectedly well or slightly above the curve of how well it would normally do, and then publishers go, ooh, we should be publishing things like that. But fundamentally, crime, romance, fantasy, sci-fi, action thriller, those kind of big core genres very rarely are doing badly. Sometimes they feel a bit stagnant, sometimes you feel like you're waiting for kind of a new voice to come along. But there are core readerships for all of those genres, and these big trends are sort of bubbles that form around a little subset of one of those genres, and everyone gets terribly excited about that. It doesn't mean the rest of those genres are dead or that no one's reading them. The fact that romantasy is big doesn't mean that nobody is reading romantic comedy. It doesn't mean that nobody is reading kind of core crime whodunit stories. All of those things are still going on and still have big readerships, but just for a little bit, the heat and the excitement and the focus in the market is over here in romantasy. That will shift, that will ebb and flow. What you hope is that after a bubble bursts, after a big trend starts to wane, publishers remember that there are readerships for books like that, and they might be, you know, sitting at this level rather than this level, but there are still enough readers to sustain publishing in those subgenres. You hope that's what happens. Honestly, it really isn't always what happens, because publishing is very, very easily influenced by trends, easily influenced by this perception of what is the next big thing. Come back next time, 2 weeks' time, when I will be talking about whether you should be writing romantasy. That's where the trend is at the moment. That's where the bubble in the market is. That's what lots of publishers say they're looking for. So is that what you should be writing? That's what we'll be talking about in 2 weeks' time. For now, so long.